My name is Amelia Hayes, though most people just call me Amy. For the longest time, my life felt like a quiet watercolor painting, soft edges, muted tones, a gentle kind of beauty you might overlook if you weren't paying attention. I lived in Havenwood, a small town nestled in a valley where the scent of pine and dampers clung to the area around. I worked from home as a freelance illustrator, creating whimsical designs for children's books. It was a life I had carefully curated, a peaceful sanctuary for my daughter, Chloe, and me. Our home was a second-floor apartment overlooking a small park. Its windows always open to the sound of rustling leaves and distant laughter. Chloe, with her bright, curious eyes and a spirit as free as the birds she loved to draw, was the vibrant heart of my world. After my older sister, Sarah, was lost to a situation she couldn't escape, I made a solemn vow at her graveside. I promised her and myself that I would always have a way out. I would never be trapped. That promise was my secret compass, a hidden nest egg tucked away for a storm I hoped would never come. When David came into our lives, it felt like the final, perfect brush stroke on my painting. He was steady, kind, and possessed a quiet strength that seemed to complement my own gentler nature. He treated Chloe not as an obligation, but as a gift, patiently helping her with her elaborate school projects and listening to her endless stories. With genuine interest, he moved in, and our little world expanded to make room for him. He shared the bills. He cooked dinners. He filled the spaces with an easy, comfortable presence. We didn't have grand adventures or passionate arguments. We had a simple, dependable rhythm. And for a while, that was more than enough. I believed we were building something solid, something safe. I never imagined that the foundation was slowly, silently cracking beneath my feet. The first tremor was so slight I almost dismissed it. It began, of all things, with a pot of chicken noodle soup. I'd spent the afternoon simmering it, the scent of thyme and rosemary filling our small kitchen. It was a chilly evening, the kind that calls for comfort in a bowl. While the soup cooled, I was helping Chloe construct a diorama of a rainforest. Our heads bent together over cardboard trees and tiny clay monkeys. "I'm hungry, Mom," she announced, her stomach rumbling on cue. "Go ahead and get us some balls, sweetie," I said, dabbing glue onto a miniature toucan. She returned a moment later with 2 steaming balls, placing one in front of me. Just as I reached for my spoon, David hurried in from the living room, holding a third ball. "Here, Amy, take this one," he said, his voice a little too bright. He nudged his ball towards me and reached for mine. I smiled, confused. "It's all from the same pot, David." "I know, but this one I think it has more chicken," he insisted, already swapping them. "You should have it." It was an odd explanation. Chloe had been the one to serve the soup. How would he know which bowl had more chicken? Before I could question it further, Chloe, ever the diplomat, reached for the bowl he'd brought for me. I lit it then. I love lots of chicken. David's reaction was swift and sharp. He snatched the bowl from her grasp, a flicker of something hard in his eyes. No, this one is for your mom. The gentleness was gone, replaced by a rigid command that felt utterly foreign. He placed the bowl firmly in front of me, then retreated to the living room with his own. A strange, cold feeling prickled my skin. I looked at Chloe, whose brow was furrowed in confusion. I gave her a small, reassuring smile, but whispered, "Don't eat the soup, sweetie. Let's just finish your project for a bit." An instinct I couldn't name, a deep, primal alarm, was ringing somewhere in the back of my mind. About 20 minutes later, I carried our untouched bowls to the kitchen to dump them. David was still at the table, finishing his. He looked up. "Why didn't you guys eat?" "Oh," I said, thinking fast. Milo jumped on the counter while we were waiting for it to cool. I think he got into it. Milo, our fluffy ginger cat, was my shadow and a notorious counter-surfer. It was a plausible lie. David's fork clattered against his bowl. His face went pale, his voice tight with an urgency that terrified me. "Which one? Was it your bowl? Cats can't have that." He just took a little lick. "It's fine," I said, trying to sound casual, my heart hammering against my ribs. But for the next several days, he watched Milo with a frantic, obsessive vigilance that made no sense. It wasn't concern. It was something else, something darker. That single, bizarre incident became a lens, bringing other small, unsettling moments into sharp focus. They had been scattered over the last 6 months, easily dismissed as accidents or oversights at the time. Now, they started to form a disturbing pattern. There was the evening a few months back. We were about to be intimate. The room cast in the soft glow of a bedside lamp. As he reached for a condom, I caught a glimpse of the wrapper in the mirror beside our bed. The color was wrong. "Wait," I said, sitting up. "I have a severe latex allergy," a fact David knew as well as he knew his own name. Anaphylaxis isn't a mild inconvenience. It's a terrifying, life-threatening ordeal. All our condoms were polyurethane in a distinct purple wrapper. This one was blue. He froze. "Oh, shoot. It must have been an old one I had from before. A mistake." He tossed it aside and apologized. But the carelessness of it settled in my stomach like a cold stone. Where was my EpiPen? I always kept it in my nightstand drawer. I made a mental note to check, then promptly forgot in the rhythm of our daily lives. Then there was the fall. I was carrying a heavy basket of laundry down our wooden stairs. David was behind me. Suddenly, I felt a hard, jarring impact on the back of my leg, and my world tilted. I tumbled down the last few steps, the laundry scattering around me. I landed hard, my ankle twisting painfully. "Oh my God, Amy, I'm so sorry," he'd cried, rushing to my side. I slipped, but he was wearing his steel-toed work boots designed for grip, and the stairs were dry and clean. At the time, I'd accepted his apology, embarrassed and bruised. But Now, the memory replayed itself with a sinister new soundtrack. The soup incident was the catalyst. It was the thread that, when pulled, began to unravel the entire tapestry of the life I thought I had. That night, after David was asleep, a frantic energy seized me. I went to the old, hollowed-out copy of Moby Dick on my bookshelf. It was where I kept Sarah's Promises emergency fund I'd painstakingly saved over the years. I changed its hiding place every few months, a ritual of quiet diligence. My fingers fumbled with the cover, my breath catching in my throat. I opened it. It was empty. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at me. I searched the room, my movements growing more frantic, tearing through drawers, looking under the bed. It was gone, and in my desperate search, another realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. My epiphone wasn't in the nightstand. It wasn't anywhere. The next morning, my hands trembled as I asked Chloe a question I dreaded. Sweetie, you know that emergency money I keep hidden? Did you happen to find it? I kept my voice soft, gentle. You wouldn't be in trouble. I just need to know. She shook her head, her eyes wide and honest. No, Mommy. A few hours later, she came to me, twisting the hem of her shirt. I forgot, she said quietly. The other day, when David and I got pulled over for his taillight being out, I saw a wallet in the glove box when he was getting his registration. She paused. It was your seafoam green one, the seafoam green wallet, the one I used specifically for that fund. I had never told her which wallet it was in, or even that it was in a wallet at all. The pieces were no longer just jagged and confusing. They were forming a terrifying picture. I had to know. That evening, I approached David, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, I seem to have misplaced a good bit of cash I had saved up. Did you happen to stumble upon it anywhere? He didn't even look up from his phone. A slow, unnerving smile spread across his face. He chuckled, a low, chilling sound. Why are you hiding money, Amy? You know you could never leave me. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a threat. It was for Chloe's Christmas presents. I lied, my voice barely a whisper. No, I haven't seen it, he said smoothly, finally meeting my eyes. You can just use my credit card for her gifts. He was a stranger, this man sitting in my living room, who had shared my bed and eaten my soup, was a complete and terrifying stranger. That night, I waited. I listened to the sound of the shower, the rhythmic pulse of the water masking the frantic beat of my own heart. It was now or never. Chloe, baby, get Milo and put him in his carrier. Quickly and quietly, I whispered, my voice shaking. I grabbed my purse and my car keys. We slipped out of the apartment like ghosts, leaving behind the life I had so carefully painted, now smeared and ruined. The first night was spent in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, the kind with a flickering neon sign that cast a sickly glow on the thin, scratchy blankets. The reality of my situation crashed down on me. I had done everything right. I had saved. I had a plan. And in one fell swoop, He had taken it all, leaving me utterly adrift. The domestic violence shelters were full. A recorded message on a stereo. Impersonal line told me so. I felt like I had not just blown up my life, but that I had been standing at ground zero of an explosion I never saw coming. The days that followed were a blur of fear and frantic logistics. David's text started a relentless barrage of manipulation. First came a picture of my EpiPen sitting innocently on my nightstand. See, it was here the whole time. You're watching too much true crime. Amy, you scared yourself stupid. I knew it hadn't been there. I had torn that room apart. He had taken it. He was playing a cruel game, trying to make me doubt my own sanity. When I refused to come back, the tone shifted. He denied having the money, then pivoted to threats. If we are broken up, you and Chloe are no longer allowed in my apartment. You'll be treated as trespassers. It was followed by a picture of his target practice sheets from the shooting range. The paper torso riddled with tight, menacing groupings of holes. The police were my next stop. I sat in a sterile, impersonal station, my voice trembling as I explained the stolen money. It's a civil issue, the officer said, his tone dismissive. He wouldn't even look at the threatening texts. I felt small, foolish, like a child tuttling over a petty squabble. My only recourse was to request a police escort to retrieve our things. When the officer and my landlord finally accompanied me back to the apartment, the scene was one of calculated devastation. It wasn't a whirlwind of rage. It was precise, personal cruelty. My work laptop charger was snapped in half. Chloe's art supplies were ruined, her drawings torn, her medications and backup medical supplies for her asthma smashed and spoiled. He had targeted the things that were essential to our well-being, our livelihood, our joy. He had attacked Chloe through her belongings, an act so malicious it stole my breath. My landlord, a kind, elderly man named Mr. Peterson, took one look at my face and the wreckage inside and quietly told me he was terminating my lease. No penalty. It was a small mercy in a sea of despair. But with no money, a new apartment was an impossibility. We were trapped in a cycle of expensive motel rooms, the cost eating away at the little I had left. The world began to feel like a tightening vice. A few weeks before Christmas, he slashed my tires, another expense I couldn't afford, another tether to helplessness. Then, one night, a heavy patio chair crashed through our motel room window, shattering the glass and our fragile sense of safety. He knew where we were. We were asked to leave for the safety of the other guests. I bundled a terrified Chloe and a yelling Milo into the car and drove with no destination in mind. We ended up in the brightly lit lobby of the police station, the only place I could think of that felt remotely safe, huddling together for warmth until morning. I was being hunted. The feeling was primal, a constant thrum of anxiety under my skin. How did he keep finding us? I had blocked him on every platform. I'd bought a cheap burner phone. I'd searched my car for a tracking device, running my hands under the chassis until my fingers were raw. Nothing. Then, One snowy afternoon while we were parked in a library lot, an idea struck me. Miro's career. It was the one constant, the one thing that had been with us through every frantic move. I ran my fingers over every inch of the fabric, pressing, probing, and then I felt it. A small, hard bump on the soft, padded bottom. He must have used a seam ripper. The stitching was so perfect. Tucked inside the lining was a small, circular tracking device. A wave of nausea washed over me. He hadn't just put it on the collar. He had hidden it surgically in the one thing he knew I would never leave behind. He had used my love for my pet as a weapon against me. The question echoed in my mind, louder and more terrifying than ever. Who was the man I had been living with? A restraining order was finally granted, a flimsy piece of paper against a man who had already proven he had no regard for rules or boundaries. Miraculously, a spot opened up in a subsidized housing unit. It was small, partially furnished, but it was in a secure building near Chloe's school, and I could just barely afford it. We would have to live in the car for a week until we could move in, but there was a flicker of hope, a real, tangible flicker. This nightmare, I told myself, was almost over. I was wrong. I had been sick with a relentless flu. The day we moved in, I dropped Chloe at school and, instead of taking my usual circuitous route home to ensure I wasn't being followed, I drove straight to our new apartment. I was exhausted, my body aching. I just wanted to lie down. I messed up. I didn't even hear him until the door splintered. The attack was brutal and swift. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of pain and flashing lights. When I came to, the metallic taste of blood was in my mouth, and my face was a mask of agony. He was gone. He was in jail. The police later told me. My nose was broken, my orbital bone shattered. Lying in that sterile hospital bed, looking at my daughter's tear-streaked face, a horrifying clarity began to dawn. The pieces of the puzzle, so long scattered and confusing, suddenly snapped into place, forming a picture more monstrous than I could have ever conceived. It wasn't about me. Not really. He had stolen my EpiPen and emergency fund, but he had systematically destroyed her things, her medicine, her clothes, her art. Why? She had nothing to do with our breakup. Why would an abuser, desperate to keep his partner, focus his rage on her child? Unless the child was the prize. A few days later, a message appeared on a dummy social media account I'd created. It was from Mike, one of David's old friends. David's mother had been on a tirade online, painting me as a villain who had gotten her baby locked up. Mike had seen it. I don't know how to tell you this, his message began, but you need to know. Whenever we were drinking, David would talk about Chloe. It was weird, uncomfortable. He'd say things like, "Can't wait until she's 18, and then laugh it off. We all just thought it was the booze talking, but it was obsessive. I felt sick, a cold dread, heavier and more profound than any fear I had felt for myself, settled deep in my bones. His desperation hadn't been about losing me. It had been about losing access to her. I had been the gatekeeper, and when I had tried to leave, to take her away, he had systematically dismantled every tool I had for escape, every shred of my safety and sanity, to keep his path to her clear. The justice system, which had failed me so many times, finally, slowly, began to work. David was out on bail for a while, a period of sheer terror where we had to abandon our new apartment and flee again. This time to my mother's home, several states away. He even managed to get the message to Chloe through her school, a horrifying breach of security that left her traumatized for weeks. But his repeated, flagrant violations of the restraining order, culminating in the violent assault, had made him impossible to ignore. Life at my mom's was supposed to be a refuge, but our struggles followed us. We were rebuilding from absolute zero. I found work, but every dollar was accounted for. We relied on food pantries, where I was met with judgment and humiliation by a woman who sneered at my requests and mocked my circumstances. My sweet Milo, my soul cat, who had been a constant comfort, developed a sudden, severe illness. A trip to the emergency vet revealed I had forgotten to remove David's number from his microchip information. The vet called him. He found us again. His chilling voice relayed through a receptionist. Tell her I'll save her cat if she comes home. The paranoia, the feeling of being hunted, came rushing back. Milo didn't make it. It was another devastating loss. Another piece of my old life turned to ash. The summer was the hardest. Chloe spent her days at the local library while I used their free internet to work. The air conditioning a welcome respite from the oppressive heat and our cramped living situation. One evening, she told me it was the worst summer of her life. She missed her friends, her own bed, our cat. Then she said the words that shattered my heart. David didn't hurt you until after we left. If we go back and promise not to leave, can we? With a heavy heart, I finally told her everything. Not just that he was mean or controlling, but the cold, calculated truth. The poison soup, the latex condoms, the stolen money, and then, the hardest part of all, what Mike had told me. I had to explain to my beautiful, innocent daughter that the man who had acted like a father to her was a predator. It was a conversation no mother should ever have, a burden no child should ever have to bear. But in that terrible moment, her confusion turned to a steady understanding. We could never go back. Just when I thought we had weathered the worst of the storm, the sky fell in. I came home one Sunday evening after a long weekend of work to find my mother's bedroom door closed. She had said she was feeling ill, isolating herself. I knocked, calling her name. When I opened the door, my world ended for a second time. My mom, my best friend, my rock, my safe harbor was gone. She had taken her own life. The grief was a physical force, an ocean that threatened to drown me. In the past 2 years, I had lost my sister, my grandmother, my aunt, my cat. The baby I'd miscarried during the height of the chaos, and now my mother. I was an island with only Chloe clinging to me. The weight of it all was crushing. How could I possibly go on? But I did. For Chloe, I had to. I cleaned up the remnants of a life that had ended in tragedy. I navigated a world that felt devoid of love and safety. And I kept putting one foot in front of the other. The trial was the final hurdle. Chloe, with a courage that humbled me, testified. She told the court everything, things I hadn't even known. He was sentenced to 12 years of guaranteed safety, 12 years for us to breathe, to heal, to rebuild. It's been a long time since that day with the chicken soup. My life is no longer a soft watercolor. It's more of a kintsugi ball shattered into 1,000 pieces and painstakingly put back together. The cracks filled not with gold, but with resilience, sorrow, and a fierce, unyielding love. We lost everything: our home, our sense of security, the people we loved. An apartment flood last summer took what little we had managed to accumulate. The financial and emotional restitution he was ordered to pay is still a distant promise, tied up in bureaucratic red tape. I am not the same gentle, trusting woman I was. The world has sharp edges now. But when I look at Chloe, I don't see a victim. I see a survivor. I see a young woman of incredible strength, her spirit dented, but not broken. We are still rebuilding. Some days, the weight of everything we've been through feels impossibly heavy. But we have each other. We have the quiet moments, reading side by side on the couch, the easy laughter that finally feels safe again. He took so much from me, but he could not take my spirit. He could not take my love for my daughter. And he could not take the promise I made to my sister all those years ago. I found a way out, and in the quiet sanctuary of our new life, however fragile it may be, we are finally, truly free.